All right, we are live in our webinar, Applying to College 101. I am Dr. Amanda Stirk with College Unmazed, and very excited to see people joining us this evening. And I have a very special guest in tonight's webinar. I have to say, probably one of my favorite people in college admissions, Joseph Madigan from Florida Southern College. Hi, Joe. How you doing tonight?
Good. How you doing?
Doing great. How is Lakeland, Florida treating you this evening?
It's great. Absolutely great. So I think as anybody that's coming from the state of Florida can attest, little afternoon thunderstorms and
Yep.
driving home this evening from my office, you see a couple of rainbows that come out of the clouds after the rain kind of went through. Welcome to Florida and our afternoon thunderstorms and our natural air conditioning that we get the opportunity to have. So yeah, it's been a great year.
Great. I know we haven't. I see some dark clouds out there, but they haven't rained yet. We just have that sticky humidity.
Sure.
Feels and smells like a jungle out there. So, Joe, why don't you tell us a little bit about your role at Florida Southern, kind of what brought you to me, and what we're doing tonight?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, Joe Madigan. I work as the Director of Recruitment Outreach at Florida Southern College. This is going to be my 14th admissions year that I get a chance to work working with students in the college admissions process. I've had the pleasure of working with students at Florida Southern College from the Southwest Florida area since 2012, 2013. So going actually into my 7th year now at Florida Southern College, exciting to have that. We've had a lot of students that have come from Fort Myers, Naples, Charlotte County on campus. Actually, it's been exciting. About 20% of our total student body comes from South Tampa to Naples. Close enough to get a college experience, not too far away to have that college experience. But at the same point in time, it's far enough to have that college experience too for families where it's in that comfort zone. In my role, I play a couple different roles within our office. I have the pleasure of serving with our amazing admissions team. We have 14 admissions team members that really kind of travel all over the country, work with students and families where they are in different regions of the country. I mentioned myself, I get a chance to work with students from Southwest Florida in the college admissions process, how credits will transfer, financial aid, and I also try and be a resource. So I have the pleasure of working on several committees throughout the state of Florida. Proud member of the Florida Tour Committee that actually helps out in planning some of the college fairs and those types of things throughout the year. And then also do a lot of financial aid nights. So I'll go out at local high schools, share information, updates about the FAFSA, Florida Student Financial Aid, and those types of things. But kind of the core of what I get the opportunity to do is partner with you, Amanda, and working with school counselors and families and starting that application and college search, which is really what I'm going to get a chance to talk about tonight. It's just how to apply to a college. Also, a little bit about behind the scenes. I have the pleasure of serving on our admissions committee at Florida Southern College. We have a committee that reviews applications for students as they apply, as many schools do, and we'll kind of uncover some of that process a little bit through the presentation tonight, too.
Fantastic. Well, I'm looking forward to it. Absolutely. And just for kind of housekeeping purposes, we do have a chat function on your screen. So if you have questions throughout this evening, feel free to type us a message. And every once in a while, I might throw something out there for you guys. So Joe, of course, says hello to everyone. And we're really looking at about a 20, 25-minute presentation because we really want to leave time at the end of the presentation really for you guys to ask questions. So please use that chat function and we might shelve it or we might talk about it throughout. The question I have up is, where is everybody from? I'm just kind of interested. Like Joe says, he works a lot with Southwest Florida, but I pull from Unmazed pulls from all over the state. Oh, we got Aventura, Florida. Welcome. Nice to see you guys. So excited to have you guys and let's get started. Thanks, Joe.
Sure, absolutely. Kind of just talking first and foremost in really what I like to call applying to college 101. I think one of the first things to kind of look at when you're looking at applying for colleges and kind of starting in that college application process, because I think everybody's really in different places, is first and foremost, kind of gathering your resources around you, understanding who your support unit is, your school counselors. If it's a student, it's maybe your parents, maybe it's guardians, maybe it's a sibling that's gone through the college search process, because I know everybody kind of goes through that at different times. And the college application process starts in different years. When I was going off to college, I went back for my senior year. I met with my counselor. I kind of sat down with my parents and said, these are a couple of schools I'm looking at. I applied to 3 schools, was admitted to 2 out of the 3 that I was looking at, decided on 1, and then that was kind of where my application process went. So, everything is kind of been pushed back now, where you can really start your college search as early as freshman year. Colleges and universities are sending out communication and information to students. Sophomores are the ones that most colleges are targeting now to encourage them to come on campus and visit, see what the school's like. And then junior year is when you really get that schedule together of, hey, this is what I am looking at for applying to schools. These are the schools I'm looking at applying to. And then really the summer in between your junior and senior year is when you can start applying for schools. And that's kind of where I'm basing a little bit of the conversation on tonight getting started, because applying, I think, sometimes is like, wow, it's this big, huge thing to start applying to colleges and universities. Just in reality, it's easier and easier and easier, I think, to apply to a college and university every single year, it seems like. For us at Florida Southern, we have an online application. Most colleges and universities have an online application. Some are only going to use application sources, or different types of applications that are out there, such as the coalition application. There are schools like Virginia Tech is a coalition exclusive school. The University of Florida used to be a coalition exclusive school, and this year they're on coalition and the common application, which the common application is called the common application because there are a wide variety of different schools that a student can apply to on the common application. Private, public, big, small, all over the globe. What's nice about the common application, a student creates an application profile. That's kind of the starting piece. The common application, if a student's a rising senior, opened on August 1st. That was the first time they could start applying to colleges and universities, as they open their common applications. And then after that point in time, you can click on as many schools as you want in the common application. Some schools have an application fee that could range anywhere between $10, $30. Seems to be kind of a common number now. Some schools are $75, $80, $90. There's schools like a Florida Southern College that doesn't charge an application fee. We're free to apply to. And schools sometimes will have a preference of how you apply. They say, we prefer you to do the common app. We want the coalition. Schools like, we're on all 3 at Florida Southern. We even have things like CapEx or paper application. It's whatever's easiest for a family. And I think most colleges and universities are in that now, where they want it to be easy for the student to go ahead and have the opportunity to apply for admission. Where it gets confusing sometimes is how you're applying for admission to a school. There's rolling admission at schools, which means you apply and they send out decisions within a certain time frame of getting your application completed and sending all your documents in. University of Central Florida is a great example of that. We're an example of that as well. We'll send a decision out to a student within about 2 to 4 weeks. There's some schools that, like the University of North Florida, they opened their application in May. They started sending decisions out 4 days after they actually started getting applications back from students. You could already have an admission decision from them, communication as an accepted student going into your senior year. We're doing some of that at Florida Southern, where I mentioned about 2 to 4 weeks. We started sending out our initial first decisions for next fall that we sent out in early July, but every school is going to be different as far as what they have as far as an option. Many schools are going to have a couple of different application options, meaning they'll have regular decision, which regular decision means that a student applies and they're considered for admission against the full pool of students that apply. I used to be at the University of Florida. I was on the admissions committee at the University of Florida. Every student would apply by November 1st. And at that point in time, all the applications will begin to be read, and they would send out their admission decisions on the second Friday in February at 5:01 Eastern Standard Time on the UF portal. Is when that would go out at one time.
And the tears came the next day. As a school counselor, my office is flooded going, so what about these other colleges?
Sure. And I think that's a great point, Amanda, because I think as you're this is a great time to talk about this. Over the summer in between the junior and senior year, there is such a thing as having too narrow of an application pool.
Absolutely.
Talk about that as we kind of go through this, because you may have a dream school that's there, but it really is not a bad idea to have some really good second tier schools. I don't call them backups, because if you're calling it backup, then I think you're setting yourself up for disappointment. That's just different language, I think, sometimes it's out there. I call them second tier because you have your first tier of like, this is the number one choice for me. And then the second tier would be, you know what? If I don't get in there and I'm not able to go there, these are my really second tier top choices that I want to go to anyways. That's there. So they're not backups. They're really just great options for you to look at no matter what your top choice may be. If you have a top choice school, there is an option at many schools to apply early decision. And this is different. This is where if you were very narrow in your college search, you could apply for early decision, which is a binding application. I can't stress this enough. If you apply early decision to a school, you really should have some thought and consideration to the fact that if you are admitted there, that is your plan to go there. Many students hear in the media and coverage that if they're applying to Duke or Harvard or Yale, apply early decision because you might have a better chance of getting in through an early decision application.
Because it's a smaller pool of people versus the large group coming in November, December.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But I think you have to think about that as, ooh, am I actually weighing lots of options? I have this question come up at Florida Southern. We have an early decision option, but many of our early decision students are 110% set already on Florida Southern. Maybe they're looking into going to our direct entry nursing program that has a capped number of spaces because we start nursing first semester, day one, year one on campus for students. Maybe it's a student that's looking at like a fine arts program like FSU. Let's say a student applies early decision to FSU. Their dream is to go into the dance program at FSU because it's an outstanding BFA program. They know if they get admitted to the school and to the program because of their talent, that's where they're going to go. Maybe it's a student that just is a legacy or an athlete. We see that more commonly for an early decision student. But again, it's just knowing that that's 110% where you want to go. When you apply to a college, every school is going to be different as far as what they require. Most colleges are going to require a couple things. A completed application for admission. You got to do that first. Almost every school now is online. Either their online application, Common App Coalition, as I mentioned. SAT or ACT test scores. Some schools are test optional. That's out there. That is a trend that's growing for some schools, but there may be a benefit to sending your SAT or ACT test scores, even though they're a test optional school. If you send their test scores, you may be qualified for more financial aid and scholarships than a student that's applying as a test optional student.
And does it matter which test? I mean, I just had a discussion with a parent the other day, and they're like, my school says only the SAT.
Right.
And my response back was what, Joe?
This is almost like it depends. Some colleges and universities just want an SAT. Some just want the ACT. A lot of schools that, especially here in the state of Florida, it doesn't really matter.
They don't care. Yeah, it's the highest score, right?
Yeah, it's the highest composite score. So many schools will super score. They'll tell you that if they super score, which means taking the best score out of each subsection on every single test that you've taken on the SAT and the ACT, combining it together for a best overall score. Bright Futures does that here in the state of Florida. They look at a composite best overall test score. Schools in the state university system here in Florida, and also the PCUF schools, which you may be less familiar with, that's private colleges and universities of Florida. There now are 18 of us that much like the 12 state university schools also follow similar bylaws, accept bright futures, prepaid, look at the same policies as far as the admissions process for students too. High school transcripts are the academic record for a student. I'm going to talk about how important this is as I go through the presentation here in the next 10, 15 minutes. It really is your academic record, and that's sometimes the best predictor of how you're going to do in college too. It is. If you've challenged yourself, you've done well academically. Some schools, like the University of Florida, just to go back to that for a minute, they have the STAR profile where you can actually do self-reporting of what's in there. That's what they want you to do, listing every course and every grade and those types of things. Most schools that are out there, you can send a high school transcript. As long as it's official, it's sent by the high school to the college or university. That's what they're going to look for. And they're going to look at your grades from grade 9 to the end of grade 11. Traditionally is what you're going to look at. That's why you're applying in between the summer between your junior and senior year, or during the beginning of your senior year is when you see application deadlines. And as a note, I even say grade 9 to grade 11. Guess what? Those high school courses you took in 7th and 8th grade that show up on the high school transcript, that counts too. And admissions committees look at that. Letters of recommendation. I put a question mark next to this because some schools, they don't look at a letter of recommendation anymore. Some schools will look at letters of recommendation, and it's very important to them. They will actually want to get some more information about a student in the holistic review process. The other thing I'll share is statements or essays. Most colleges and universities have this as part of an application process. Coalition and Common App have essay prompts to complete. This should be the voice of the student. And a couple of things I always love to share as far as a person on an admissions committee is if you're trying to set yourself apart from, think about it this way, I go back to the University of Florida, but I can even state this for UCF, USF, even FGCU. They receive a very, very large number of applications every single year. And when admissions committees are reviewing applications, the ones that stand out have really unique and special essays. One this year that a student wrote for me was, and for Florida Southern College that I got a chance to read, was about how they actually created and raised a chicken coop and turned it into a small business for themselves. There wasn't another student that was explaining that in an essay. And I don't want to dishearten anyone by saying this, but I think getting that injury and overcoming that in athletics, not scoring the winning goal in an athletic game, we want to see leadership. We want to see unique opportunities, things that you've done. We know a lot of things are similar for students that are there. And just to note, I see the questions that are on there that have come up too. We'll make sure we roll some of those questions throughout the presentation here to talk about the importance of curriculum, and then also how schools are viewed by colleges and universities where students are attending the high school courses that they're taking.
Fantastic. And I'll go back as you kind of go through that. I agree with you with the essay and even the application. There is an essence of, and a way to really kind of be able to showcase to you as an admission rep the strengths of the student. And I think
Absolutely.
a lot of times parents and students get so, they want to put everything on there and they want to shove it, as full as possible, but you get lost in the noise. So sometimes really kind of stepping back and looking at the whole application as a whole and your different pieces, like your letters of recommendation can tell one part of the story. Your essay could tell another, your resume. I know in my book, The College Unmazed, I talk a lot about that, is using all of your pieces to tell your story. Don't just keep repeating it because space is limited. So just really be cognizant of how you tell your story is important. So I like that point. Absolutely.
One of the things that I do like to bring up, as far as I talked about how to apply, and then I also talked about what's needed to apply, I also want to have families be aware of when you're applying, what are colleges and universities really looking for academically for a student? The federal government requires now every college and university to publish a middle 50% profile. This means that this is kind of, if you look at the bell curve, you have 25% of your students are at the top of this bell curve. 25% of your students that are admitted are at the lower end of the bell curve. This is truly in the middle of what they're receiving for students each and every year. And again, feel what you might about GPA and test scores, but this is really what a college and university is going to be looking at. How well is that student going to do academically based on what they have on the college campus already and what those students are coming in with as far as academic profiles. The state university system has published their matrix every single year. I provided the link to this on here. And I think one of the things that you may be surprised at as you look at the matrix that's on there, I think everybody kind of realizes how high of a GPA and test score it is to get into, say, a University of Florida and what you have for middle 50% there. But I think you also might be surprised, okay, you're looking at state university system schools. What are they accepting to go to FGC? What are they accepting to go to a UWF that is looking to build their student body, that's looking to bring in students that maybe are within kind of the low, middle, the bottom 25% of students admitted at a state university school that's a flagship, where they say, oh, a student that's Bright Futures eligible, that's our sweet spot. That's right within our middle 50%. That's where we want to invest our dollars, and we want to really bring those students and attract them to our college or university. Same thing for PCUF. I think that sometimes you think, well, it's a private university, they might be less selective. The University of Miami is part of PCUF. They're very selective in the admissions process. Florida Southern College has the same middle 50% profile as Florida State University here in the state of Florida. And you'll see some very strong similarities in the universities in the state system and private system, whether it be in-state or out-of-state, and what they're accepting for a middle 50%. One thing I always talk about is kind of not necessarily the middle 50%, but the top 75% too. Do you match that student that's kind of on the lower level of the middle 50% all the way up beyond that, where a student's got a perfect score on the SAT or ACT, has that 6.9 GPA? I don't even know if that's possible. Depending on the school district you're coming from, that's out there. You've taken every AP and any class you can to bolster that GPA. And that's when you're looking at that middle 50%, it's based on the recalculation that the school does. If they are actually looking specifically at a comprehensive SAT or ACT, meaning the concordance score, and if they super scored upon that as well. So these are great links to look at. The beauty of the SUS and the PTUP matrix is not only does it show what I like to say the top 75%, it's going to give a student a generic idea of, do I have a 75% chance of giving into this college or university based on that middle 50% or above? And that's, I think, a good way to look at that. It's a good realistic look at, do you have the actual best chance of admissions too? So yeah, absolutely. I can certainly paste that in for the links to the SUS and the PCUF. Encourage you to take a look. When I talk about PCUF, and even like your University of Miami's or Southeastern universities, that's more your Christian affiliated schools that's here, they do have more money to give sometimes to students that are also within that top 75%. And that's where they're going to be funding those students beyond just state-based aid that a student's going to get as well. So it's a good look at that. As a note as well, the SUS matrix as well as the PCUF matrix will update in the first 2 weeks of September. So these numbers that are on there are based on the class that came in last year in the fall of 2018. And then it'll be the fall 2019. School counselors also have this information as well. I just pulled Brevard County Schools. It was easy to find as a Google search for the SUS, and PCUF is right on the PCUF.
And there's a lot more information on the matrix in general, what type of application, their GPA, how many students are admitted, how many are, what type of application. There's just tons of information. That is kind of the go-to matrix I think everyone uses to really say. And I think part of this, like you were saying, being honest, where am I falling at? And now you might have some other special factors that you might, and I know you're going to talk about that you factor into admissions, but sometimes it comes down to numbers, and then some schools are only numbers based. Do you have the
Right.
ACT, SAT scores? Do you have the GPA? And other schools that are more holistic review look at other factors as well. So I don't mean to talk in before, you probably will. So
No, that's a beautiful transition.
there
And
you go.
for the next slide that's there, uh, this is an example of a school that is very, very much GPA and test scores. Is
Yeah.
the University of South Florida. Pay your application fee, apply, send your transcript, send your test score. That's all they want.
Yeah.
That they're not even looking at essays for the student any longer. They want you to meet deadlines, send the things that they need, and then they review. That's based upon that. So that's a true school. There are many schools like that. It's GPA test scores. What is it? Cut and dry. This is what we're looking for a student that's there. So kind of gives you a good idea of what's there for that. On the flip side of that, like the University of Florida, very, very deadline driven. They want you to apply between August and November 1st. That's where you're going to have priority admissions deadline. It's very space limited for students that's there each year. If you apply after November 1st, I don't even know what to kind of say for a parent or a student that's kind of going through that. Just apply by November 1 if you're looking at UF as a school to apply to. And this is, they ask for the student self-reported academic record that's there that takes some time to complete by the student.
Yes.
Test scores have to be in, and I'm talking officials have to be in from the student by December the 15th. It's extremely limited for space availability. So they want students to make sure they're following their deadlines and getting everything done that they need as part of the application process. The University of Florida is extraordinarily holistic in the review process. So they will look at multitudes of factors. Now, GPA and test scores sure are important, but they do look at things such as, is a student coming from a specific high school? Sometimes what's the curriculum like at that high school? And when I talk about specific high school, not every high school has 15 APs to take. And they're also having dual enrollment and those types of things. Sometimes it's a school that only offers honors courses. The University of Florida is going to know that. There's schools who know that, and committees know that as part of the application process. That's where you can get to know, and I can't stress this enough, talking and building a relationship with the admissions representative that works with your area for the school that you're interested in really goes a long way. At least getting you the right information that's coming from the school that's there.
Even for some of the big schools, or for you, Joe, like, do you kind of, you said it was in a committee review, but do you review kind of your students, and then would UF do the same thing where they kind of look at, all right, Christina, you are assigned to this area, look over this school?
Yeah, that's a great point. Every school is going to be different for that. One of the things, if it's a student that I actually have in my area that's applied, I actually get to do one of the initial reviews of that student's application. And I even say that to my students. Right now, I'm communicating with students who applied to Florida Southern College over the summer saying, hey, I want to schedule time to talk. I present your application to our admissions committee. So is there something beyond your application you want me to share? Let's go over some of the details of what's within your application. If it's a student that's within our top 25%, I'm also kind of changing the narrative and talking with them. You know, you may be admitted. Are you interested in our honors program? Are you interested in these different types of things, which are also things a student can identify as part of their application? Touch on that to start, but you have the opportunity on many applications to share. Are you interested in an academic major? That could also play a role in what you're looking at as far as the admissions process. Be honest in that. I mean, don't pick a major that they're like, I could probably get in there because if I'm in this major, that's great, but everybody's applying for engineering at UCF, so I know it's going to be a little more competitive. That's there. Be true to what you're doing in the application process. For Florida Southern, just to share a little bit about our process, we are rolling admissions in the application process. There's several schools in the state university system. Many PCUF schools are that way. As far as private schools, we do look at things holistically. Coming from the University of Florida to Florida Southern has been a natural transition because we recalculate the GPA for a student in a very similar way. The only thing different for us when we recalculate compared to many of the state system schools, and Bright Futures more so specifically, we look at everything. So students taking music, art, those types of things. We're actually adding that into the recalculation, where Bright Futures is going to look at the 5 core academic areas. And that's what the state university schools are looking at too. Are you completing the Florida high school curriculum that includes your 2 foreign languages, your math, your science, your social science, your English that's there? Those are things that they consider. For us, we look at everything as a whole. And that's where every school is going to be a little bit different.
And I think I just want to clarify the recalculated GPA because they might not understand that. I know in my book I talk a lot about it because I don't think kids know enough. They're like, oh, senior year, I already have my 4 math credits. I don't need a 5th math credit. But basically, by using the SAR and using the mechanism of you typing in your grades, they are pulling out the core courses and giving you extra weight for honors courses, dual enrollment, IB, Cambridge ACE, and AP. They give you a full point higher. So if you had a 4.0, they give you a 5.0. And so they recalculate it. So the GPA that's on your high school transcript, both weighted and unweighted, is not what they use. Because if you take out a kid that does a lot of electives and they have A's in classes that really, they're just taking the easy fluff classes, those A's get removed and your core looks a little more barren per se. So knowing your recalculation, so I know one of the questions that Carla, you had earlier about dual enrollment, any of those college courses, you get that additional weight towards your core, and it really helps you in both the SUS and even though you're holistic, you're still looking at that, right, Joe? You're still looking at and
it's additional weighting. It's a student challenge themselves based on what's available at their high school and courses that are there. So I think that's, if you're looking to become a better competitive applicant, I get that question a lot. How am I more competitive for admission? And one of the first things that I ask is I say, are you taking advantage of all of the opportunities that you have for some of those high academic courses that are there at your high school? And that could be, you're taking the honors, you're taking the APs, you're taking dual, it doesn't matter. If you're challenging yourself and you're doing well, that's really the best that you can do based on what your school offers. And when we look at, we look at high school transcripts, test scores, letter of recommendation, personal statement for a student. We look also at some other additional factors. We'll look about involvement. We'll look at leadership. Some schools, that's a huge deal for them. Stetson University, that's a private school here in state. They have leadership-specific things that they want students to list as part of the application process as well, because it's something that's important to them in the application process. For us, and the other thing I'll share a little bit, when you look at the matrix and the profiles of schools, you can also see acceptance rates as far as what is that school really traditionally accepting for that school. I can share for Florida Southern College, we have just over 9,000 applicants. We admitted just about 51% of the students that applied. And not one single profile was the same for every single student. You can see the profile that we have, a 3.78 GPA, 1130 to 1300 SAT, a 23 to 29. One thing you're probably thinking of, well, that GPA seems a little bit maybe lower based on academics. Look at the profiles of the school too. We're half in state and half out of state. So a school in New York is going to weight very differently and grade potentially differently than a school in Florida is going to too. This is also, and Carly had brought about Florida Virtual School that's there. They're an affiliated Florida public high school that's there. They have an official high school transcript. Everything is really the same on a Florida Virtual School transcript as it is coming from, it could be Charlotte High School, it could be Barron Collier High School. It's going to be very similar that's on there. And all those transcripts for Florida Virtual School come from one centralized location in Orlando. You know that. I see it every year, and it continues to grow. There's more K-12 online schools that are out there. Again, it doesn't really necessarily matter the high school students coming from. It does matter what they're taking and if they're academically successful, because that's going to show preparation for college and the level that they're going to be going into. I think, and I apologize that the slide kind of didn't kind of connect here very well as far as the pieces to this, but just to kind of explain, I gave a little bit of a calendar here. We also have this available through our informational pieces that we sent out of Florida Southern. It's on our website as well. It kind of shares a little bit of a timeline to think about for the application process. There were over 400 schools who opened their application for admission this summer before June 1st. So the student wasn't even done with their senior year of high school. We started accepting applications May 15th. The University of West Florida and UNF starting accepting applications the first week of May. They were right after May 1st, and they're already working on that. They were one of the initiators of that in the state of Florida. Like Florida State, UF, some of the big flagship schools, your big schools out of state, your Elons, Emory's, your Dukes, those types of schools, they're opening soon. They have a traditional time frame that maybe you're more used to. When you think about the application process, financial aid opens October 1 of the senior year. Early decision deadlines are usually November 1, or that's a priority deadline for UF. Many scholarship deadlines are in the early fall or late winter, I always like to say. So some of the best scholarships now have been moved up earlier into the cycle because of the FAFSA being opening earlier. So applying earlier is going to be really critical. Now is the time, if you have a rising senior, this is really the critical time frame between now and the 1st of November. And I would really even emphasize more October the 15th to get those applications completed. They look good. And I'm going to talk about making that look good, because after you're accepted, this is just the first step. Every school's going to have different kind of processes. You have to submit a deposit. They want you to file FAFSA, be considered for financial aid. There's housing, medical forms. You want to give yourself enough time to complete these different things so you're not trying to do everything in a rush. You want to enjoy that summer in between graduation and the senior year and going off to college. And I think thinking early in the process is helpful.
And I think May 1st is like you have to tell the colleges some benefits to possibly accepting early. So let's say I have my applications, all my decisions and so forth. I always say get your award letter before you make that decision. See how much scholarship money's coming in, because, and Joe, you and I have talked about it, and I use your numbers all the time as a great example that, you don't look at that sticker price, because some people say, oh, maybe Florida Southern or a private school or whatever is out of my reach. And all of a sudden you get the award letter and you can find it's sometimes comparable or even beats cheaper what the state university will give you. But I know also sometimes housing and stuff is kind of attached to when you, so is there any kind of special thing, or just kind of once put it on in? What do you think?
I think it's interesting. We have students that are already submitting their deposits for next fall that have been admitted this summer.
They haven't even started their senior year, and they're already
and they've made their decision.
They're making pillows.
That's not necessarily the norm. What I will share with you is many students are starting to submit their deposits more so between late December and the middle of March. And the reason for that is financial aid from colleges and universities now is going out to students between the middle of December and the middle of March. So you're able to make those decisions
much sooner.
And I know that I have a couple of different events taking place in the Southwest Florida area. We'll be hosting some webinars at Florida Southern this year as well throughout the fall on the importance of FAFSA, applying for local area scholarships, and how to review a financial aid award, because there is no universal financial aid award. There's no universal way of knowing about scholarships as well. But applying is the first step. I get questions at a college fair table. We'll go to college fairs and a parent and a student will come up and they'll say, oh, you're private, what's the cost? And I always like to say, they're public next door to me. Do you know what the cost is there for your specific student? And you don't really know that until you've applied, gotten admitted, gotten offered scholarship information, and the full financial aid overview that's there. So first step, apply, and applying early, getting those documents sent in early, very important for scholarship consideration that's there as well. And I covered some of this stuff as far as being behind the curtain, but I talked about some schools admitting just based on credentials. I mean, some schools are open enrollment. Florida Southwestern is open enrollment. You go in, fill out an application, you're in at Florida Southwestern State College, the former community college system in the state of Florida. If you're looking at super competitive colleges, let's talk about just the university system in the state of California. It's very hard to get into schools that are there, very competitive.
Just unless you're on the rowing team. No, sorry. sorry.
It really just depends on where you're looking.
Yeah.
One big note, and this is behind the curtain.
Mm-hmm.
Understand what term you are applying for. I'm going to go ahead and just use the University of Florida as an example. The University of Florida has a multi-faceted and multi-layered application system. So you can apply for fall, you can apply for summer A, summer B, you can apply for the Innovation Academy, you can apply for Spring Start, you can apply for UF Online, there's Santa Fe to UF there sometimes for engineering students. There's the PACE program that's out there. There are multiple pathways now that many colleges and universities in the state of Florida are trying to build their student population because they just don't have enough room in their fall class that's there. It doesn't necessarily mean it's going to get easier to get into that school. And if you applied for that term, expect to enroll in that term if you're offered admission to it. The appeal process is very difficult, and it doesn't always necessarily work out for students where they're admitted for one term and then they say, well, I really want to come for fall. Well, you applied for summer. We intended that you wanted to come for the summer term. That's there. So understand what you're applying for when applying for that. I mean, even for Florida Southern, we don't have a summer start term. We start actually next week is when our students arrive back on campus. So we have a little bit of an earlier start for our students in early August. They're finished a little bit earlier. That's because of our geographic population. And then students can take classes over the summer, but we don't have a summer start term. We do fall and spring traditional. Many schools will do that. The other way that some colleges are trying to make a decision on a committee, and I've seen this where it's, I have one student and another student, and I have one space. I can only offer it to one of the two students or one out of 3 or 4 students. When we start looking at things about that student, maybe they have similar academic profile, similar different things about them, they're looking at similar majors. One thing that very much stands out is demonstrated interest. Not every huge university is going to look at this. I don't believe, and I can't quote this, but I don't believe the University of Central Florida, with over 65,000 plus students as part of their community and multifaceted campuses, is looking at, has the student visited campus? Because they know that that's happening continuously. But for a smaller school that is less spaces to offer, and it's between one student and another student, one of the first things I know we look at Florida Southern is, has the student visited? Have they communicated with the admissions counselor? Are they going to be a good fit for Florida Southern College based on the conversations that that student and that parent had about their interests, and are they likely to enroll in that school? And
so if I give them the spot, are they most likely to take that spot?
Correct. Correct. Absolutely. So I love hearing from students when they say, Florida Southern College is in my top 2 or it's my top choice. If I can make it work, that's there. I can work with a student if I know that. But that's not necessarily the case for every student when they're applying to multiple schools. I'll get into some of the data about that, but this is a realistic question. Does your admissions counselor actually know who you are when you're applying? So I get calls a lot of times when we send out decisions, and maybe it's not the decision that the family was hoping to hear, and it'll be the very first time I've ever talked to the student.
Wow.
And we may have admitted a student that's visited a couple times, come out to our programs, very, very interested, shows that. It's called interest. And that includes going out to the visits when the school comes to your high school, going to the college fair and filling out one of those cards, filling out the electronic thing that's in there saying, yeah, I raised my hand. I want to get more information from that school. I think that's very helpful to think about that, because that can be a differentiator. And when I bring this up, there's a lot of data to back this up. This is from the NACAC, which is the governing board for most colleges and universities that are not-for-profit accredited universities in the United States, schools in the PCUS system, the SUS. I like college football, so I'll bring up Southeast Conference, the ACC that's there. So those types of schools that are recognizable, you know them academically, you've heard of them. And what they look at is every year they get reports back, what's called WICHE data that comes back from colleges and universities. This is federal data. NACAC reports on this. The most considerable influence is grades in all right now for what schools look at. If you look at that, it's far and above most of the other options that are there. Grades in college prep is second. So the question came up of how important is it in that AP or the dual enrollment that's there? That was the second piece there. Not only just the grades overall, but how do you do with those actual college prep courses? Because as we know, schools are trying to add more and more and more onto their actual plates of APs and dual enrollments and IBs. And students are signing up for them thinking, I'm taking more challenging courses that's going to help me get in. They still have to do well on those really college prep. Test scores are still important. Half of schools are saying that that is important in SAT or ACT. There's no preference for most schools. Curriculum is very close behind that. Are you taking the most challenging courses that are in there? Or especially in your senior year, the strength of your schedule. Schools will look at this. We rescinded admission decisions for students at the University of Florida when they would apply, send in their score, their academic report that was there. We would see what they're taking in their senior year. We get a final transcript. We have to have it if a student's choosing to enroll. And all of a sudden, all those classes that looked amazing you're taking in the senior year, your APs, some IBs, you're taking honors, you're involved in leadership that's there, changed into not so strong courses that's there, or a couple of homerooms that are there as well. That you're starting to kind of blow off some courses.
And I'll tell you a story, and I get this as, you know, my role as the dual enrollment person at our college, and I had a student who got a D in Comp 1, missed her final deadline, and it was at her high school. Anyway, got a D, and USF, FSU, and UCF all rescinded because now she has a college GPA of a 1.0 for her dual enrollment course because her college transcript's a 1.0. She had AP, she had a good, you know, scores overall, and they said, go back and retake the course. Then once you get your AA, we'll take you. But all three state universities rescinded it based off of that one grade.
And it's heartbreaking for us to have to share. It really is. So I kind of going down the list here a little bit more. If you look, second to last is demonstrated interest on here. That's even higher than a teacher recommendation. Now that's there. It's really even higher than a counselor recommendation. It's almost the same as your essay or writing sample. And it's going to grow. This is continuing to grow as it's getting more competitive with more students applying to similar colleges and universities that are out there. So,
well, and going back to that like the Common App or the coalition, because the colleges have to weed through who's actually interested or who's throwing me on this Common App and paying the, you know, like you said, Florida Southern's free. Oh, I'm applying to UCF. It's Common App. I'm going to throw Florida Southern on. Let's see. And so while that could be part of a strategy, that's not probably going to get you very far if you've never engaged. So,
and it's very true. For colleges and universities, our goal is to engage the student as well. So if the student raises their hand and then starts to show interest at the time of application, that happens as well. Some data to kind of show on that, the current average for students that right now, today, that are applying to schools is about 6.5 schools that students have already applied to since Common App opened and Coalition opened this week.
Oh, are you saying like right now that's how many colleges
that they're working on their applications for?
Wow.
Now,
the
average number of students has already applied to about 6 schools at this point in time during the year, or kind of has finished the application pieces but hasn't sent everything in. This is some expectations data from Ruffalo and Olevitz, ACT, and Narcua that actually does a lot of data. So the average student now is applying between 10 and 12 schools. I shared this story of myself applying to 3 schools.
I played the one.
This has grown. I have a young lady that I worked with 2 years ago that came into Florida Southern. She applied to 37 schools.
I've seen that.
24, auditioned at 17, and ultimately chose Florida Southern.
Wow.
And it's stressful on the parent. It's stressful on the student.
And it's a lot of money sending in your scores and paying for each
Absolutely.
application. I think University of Miami is like $80, isn't it? I mean, it's so expensive.
Absolutely. And then I'll talk a little bit more into this and I'll dive a little bit more. I just want to really give some emphasis to this and just bring it to light. 66% of applications submitted for admission this past year were at least partially, meaning 50% completed by a parent, that they did that directly. 42% of applications was actually completed fully by a parent. I think you're probably like, well, how in the world do we know this information? Artificial intelligence tells us a lot of times, especially because there's an application portal and those types of things. Colleges and universities are seeing this now.
Wow.
Not to say, and I think this is stated beautifully, Tom Weddy, Vice President of Enrollment Management at Butler, it kind of did a great quote here. He says, it doesn't tell us that a student's interested if we get 15 phone calls from mom, that they're driving that. We want families to be involved in the process. Schools are recruiting whole families now to be part of that because we want parents on campus for our family weekends, our athletic events. We want you engaged and involved in the academic process for Generation Z. We know that and the connections that students are having with their parents now. You are part of this true process. But at the same point in time, the student is the student because they're going off to college. And this is a great opportunity to start kind of transitioning to that independence that they're going to have in colleges there and really start having that conversation as well. Are you ready as the parent? Is the student ready to have that independence? Or is it more so, should they stay close to home? Is that the plan? Have you talked about how far is too far and how close is too close? Because that's applying. You're starting that in the application process. I also love to say, you talked about too much in the application. No 17-year-old should be submitting a 3-page resume.
I don't even know if I can. I got a doctorate degree.
I don't think most individuals, when they go to fill out an application for the job, are submitting a 3-page resume.
Right.
They're putting bullet points of what's most important to them. That's what's most successful because you can share your story in different ways. Committed to several things for the student's application. That's the biggest thing. We love seeing that a student has spent, and this is also, we understand that family dynamics are real. Students have different responsibilities. Maybe it's they're spending 40 hours a week babysitting after school a younger brother, a younger sister. That takes a lot of responsibility, and they should be listing that in an application that's there because that's time dedicated to something. Maybe they work a part-time job. They're working 5 to 8 hours a week over the entire course of the year. We give a scholarship from Publix because shopping's a pleasure there. For the connection for that. You never know where some of those things might pop up, and that may even show of like, oh wow, this student actually has worked for a place for a long period of time. They might get a scholarship from their employer because they offer something like that. Committees think of this stuff and listing the details, digging deep as opposed to just a bucket list. That's going to be more important. Please proofread. I give the example that's here. I'll even just say I saw this today in a student's application. In reading the student's essay, I don't know if it didn't work out for when they tried to copy it in the application. That happens sometimes. Before hitting the submit button, make sure it looks good.
Yeah.
Schools do look at this. Essays do count if you make mistakes on them. If it's a generic essay and everybody's writing the same essay or it's the same prompt, you can't do anything about that sometimes as an admissions counselor or reviewer. But boy, does it stick out like a sore thumb in the non-positive way when a student does a whole lot of issues of proofreading, punctuation. I was an English teacher, and I read on our admissions committee. There are many English professionals that read on admissions committees that are out there. So props to my admissions people that work in English or English teachers that are out there as well. Last minute, waiting to the last minute to apply. And Amanda, you said this. Mm-hmm. You get your decision from X school. It's the only school you applied to. It's not the decision you're hoping for. Then you go through the appeal process of that, going through that school. That doesn't work out. Appeal process takes 2 months, usually at a college or university, a lot of times. At that point, maybe you're in March or April, and you're going through, oh my goodness, I'm off to college and graduating high school in a short period of time. I'm either going to be staying home and going to the local state college, community college. And if you're a strong academic student, there are still some opportunities out there for you. But this is where you really need to have a backup plan ahead of time of applying to those schools that are the second tier that I talk about. And the backup plan is applying early should be the plan. The schools you're picking should be a multitude of lists. Carl, you mentioned you applied to 10 schools. I grew up in New York too. I applied to 10 schools in 10 states. So that's not the norm for most students now. Mm-hmm. Most students are applying. 72% of the schools that students will apply to are within 100 miles of where they live now. So, but more students are looking at that as an expansion, and that's a good conversation to have. Don't wait till the last minute to apply, though. I mentioned generic essay, too narrow of an application pool, posted cost. Amanda, you talked about eliminating a school and not applying to them because of what their sticker price is. There are schools that have sticker prices that are out there $70,000, $80,000 a year, where a student, depending on their financial information that comes back, they may meet the full need of that student that's there as well. Mm-hmm. So you don't know. You just don't know. Don't eliminate applying to school.
And also, different colleges have different dedications to those institutional scholarships. So one thing, kind of going back to these documents that they're getting, your resume, your essay, and stuff like that, at the point of application, going back to what we talked about earlier, you're looking at additional programs, you're looking at special enrollment periods, maybe direct entry programs, but you're also looking for institutional scholarships. And I have found, and what I think is funny in the College on Maze book, what's really interesting is just starting it 2 years ago and updating the information from this year. I know you and I were discussing in May and June all the new stuff that was coming up, and I was trying to get it in there because it changes so quickly. But one of the things that changes I was most surprised at, the biggest change was how people give institutional aid and which schools give more, even in the state, in the SUS system. Some give more than others. And if you have a financial need, you might actually get further at a different school than, the one that you're thinking of.
That's why I mentioned the UWFs, the UNFs, the FIUs. Traditionally, they're trying to recruit students, much like private schools are almost to a certain extent, and have some institutional aid to give for students that are high achieving, high academic students. And that's, I think, a lot of times, if you're looking at those middle 50%, you can kind of get a garnered idea of, I might be able to get a little bit more aid here compared to there. But communicating with the admissions professionals is helpful. I love kind of putting this up as just a visual. I'm a huge Chick-fil-A fan. I love Chick-fil-A.
I've never eaten Chick-fil-A.
Oh, gosh.
And I've never had a public sub either. I know.
We now have a Boar's Head Deli on campus serving pub subs this fall. So
there you go.
That's an exciting development. So you may have to come and try that.
I will.
But I talk about Chick-fil-A for a minute because, and I put up all the sauces. If you Chick-fil-A, they ask you what sauce would you like a lot of times. And I always call this choice preference. I mean, everybody's got their favorites and that are there. But I think sometimes you have to kind of dabble into other ones too to kind of see what you really like, because you could get set on one that you kind of stick with all the time. But then you see a friend try one, or you go and you're like accidentally get, that's the fun one. You accidentally get the extra sauce and you're like, well, I'll try it or I'll mix them together or something. And I'm going on this train because choosing a college to apply to is based on your preferences. And that's what it should be based on. Take out some of the different things that you will find out later. Financial aid costs, that's there. You'll find that out within a couple of months. Is it the right fit or not? Especially if it's a school that's free to apply to. There's no risk and high reward. You could get a great financial aid package, could be the perfect fit for you. Doing your research on that school. Will you fit within that middle 50% profile, not only for admission, but also for the culture of the campus that's there too. If you have a perfect score of a 36 and the average, and nothing against schools, but this is just the true data that's out there. There are some schools in the state of Florida that have an average ACT test score of a 17. They have a different mission of that college and university that's there, of this population they're trying to serve sometimes at that school as well. And they're looking at things differently. So are you going to fit very well with that school that has, if you have that great GPA and test scores, that has a different mission or different values, even what you're looking for? Do you want to be in a class, a physics class of 669 students that's there? I had a student that actually attended a state university over the summer, took one class. It was with 669 students in a physics class.
Wow.
And decided this is not for me. And they wanted to come to Florida Southern for the fall instead of the choice that they had made. Some schools can make that work depending on the space availability, but I think thinking about these details ahead of time. Are you an online learner? Do you really mind taking online classes? The University of Florida is very open about that. At least one of your classes each semester will be online. Most likely two of your classes each semester is going to be online because of the size of what you have in your first 2 years. Certainly that can be different coming in with any college credit that's there. That should also be part of this too, is how accepting is that college or university of those college credits that you're earning, the ACE, the APs, the dual enrollments. Is it coming in course for course? Is it counting for what I like to, in my terms, call fluff that's there? So, or a student coming with an AA coming into Florida Southern, or I worked at the University of Florida with our high school AA students. Those classes came in course for course, but we also wanted to have a conversation with that student. What's your plan now? Are you going to graduate early? Are you looking to go to med school? If that's your option and you got an AA, we need to come up probably with a 3.5 year at the least plan for you to be a competitive applicant to go off to a medical school program that you might be interested in. And those are real conversations that we have to have. And it starts with that choice preference. What's your sauce? What's your flavor that you like? What ones do you pick out of that? And then that'll help determine which schools that you're going to apply to too, based on the preferences that you have. So prioritize, apply, and then you decide once you've gotten your decisions back. That's really what you're going to do as your next steps. I would be remiss if I didn't put visit and really talk about that. Talk for at least 8 minutes on demonstrated interest tonight. You need to visit the schools. And I think sometimes students will say, I'll visit after I get admitted. I'll visit after I apply. And I can't stress enough, go and visit schools now. And then now going off after you get a chance to go off and visit the school, especially visiting the school during the summer.
It's dead.
In the summer. You need to go back.
I think going multiple times, because I think the first time you're so overwhelmed, you don't know what to ask, and you're just trying to figure out the process. And then, I know you have the night where you invite them all to stay on campus. Or you go for a big family weekend, or you do, you got to keep going back because your own priorities change as you figure out what your sauce is. You know what I mean? And so you're kind of still dipping until you figure it out.
I love that you're using my scenario.
You're welcome. Yeah.
I will say this, like our Scholars Weekend that we do, that's our
Yeah,
overnight program for accepted students. Students get to stay overnight, take
love it.
classes in their area of interest, participate in student life. They are a student on our campus for 24 hours. We're a residential campus. 94% of our students live on campus. That's there. If you're looking for more of a commuter experience, there's schools out there for that. To know that, you got to visit and ask those questions. You know, what percentage is a commuter student? How many students are here on the weekends? What's there to do? You got to get the feel of the culture and the student life. I always get kind of when families come to visit us, I'll ask, where have you been? Where you got a chance to visit? And it's interesting when I hear, oh, we went to the big open house programs here, and it was just so huge, and I just didn't feel it. And I'll say, oh, so are you still kind of following through? And they're like, oh, yeah, we're going to apply because it's not really like that. Big actual programs are probably more indicative of what the school is going to be like than doing a one-off tour. And you can always sometimes say that they're trying to put their best on for you at a big open house. Our Scholars Weekend is as raw and real as you're going to get for a student, and I love
And
that.
you talk to students. I mean, you talk to
Yes.
students. That's the key thing. And no matter what visits you do, talk to the students. Ask them, what do you like about it? What do you not like about it? What would you change? I think that's so important, is just to ask those real questions. Yeah.
As you're going out to visit, doing second visits, something that's now popular is the third visit. This is a new trend that's going on, and this is after admission and just before decision. Go on college campus and look completely and totally lost. Anyone will help you on campus. So I think it's fun to tell families that, and have the student do it. Absolutely. And follow behind and see how they're doing. If you're a parent or a guardian, follow behind them, see how, but let them kind of take the lead of look completely lost on the campus.
I love it.
Now, if you're like, that's awesome, nobody bother me while I'm kind of going around, I want to do my own thing, you'll probably see that on some campuses, and then other campuses will be like, you'll have 4 or 5 people to come up to see if they can help you. They're like, well, back off. And that's okay. For us, if you came on our campus and you expected like just to kind of lay low and do your own thing, that is not us. I mean, we have 3 career centers. One of them is just dedicated for students that are looking into going to health professions in the medical field. And that's our coordinator for that, Lauren Album, meets with those students and is in front of them, emails, communicates, tells them, here's your plan of how to apply to medical school. Here's the prep interviews that you're going to do. Here's the med schools coming on campus that I want you. And now you're required to go and visit with when they're here. There's schools that are going to plan things like this out for a student. And then there's other schools that are going to say, it's really up to you to kind of find your way. And that's okay. There's a school for everybody. Knowing this information, I think, guides a little bit of the application process. I hope this demystifies some of the application process too tonight, because it's simple to apply. Start online. It's harder to build the list of schools that you're applying to ahead of time, and then also narrow that down once you've applied to those schools and really deciding what's going to be the best fit. But you shouldn't neglect any school just because you haven't heard of them, that you don't know a lot about them. If you're uninformed about that school, do a little research. Google is a magical tool. It's wonderful. You can tell you a lot. I don't recommend Wikipedia for college information that's out there, because it's not going to give you a true resource. The other thing, check social media. That's a really good indicator. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Snapchat. See what the students are doing. If a student's looking at the application process, they're the one applying, are they going to actually be like one of those students that's on that campus that's there? And you'll see that through the kind of the realness of what's on social media a lot of times, through clubs, organizations, activities. And I'm not talking like the admissions websites and those types, which are great resources, by the way, for getting the information of how to apply, what's needed, the transactional items. I'm here to help. Ultimately, that's what I get a chance to do with my families. Is I love helping families, guide them through what do you need in the application process, what do you need to complete this, should we get additional items. I get families a lot of times, I didn't have this as a question tonight, but I'll ask the question and answer it as well. How How many times is too many times to retest on the SAT and ACT? I think that depends on the student. If a student is testing 8, 10, 12, I've seen 17 times the students tested, and it's just they're getting the same score over and over. Trying each test is important. I think you should try SAT, try ACT, because the student's going to get an idea of what they're more comfortable with. Testing at least 2 times on the test that's more comfortable is important to get a super score. I think the average now, I'll get this data in the next week or so, as a student here in the state of Florida is testing between 3 to 5 times. And the driving force behind that is futures.
Right. And you have until the end of your senior year, June of your senior year, to get that score. And this is the last year on the old scores. Yes. Next year, the SAT will increase. Yeah.
Correct. So SAT is going to increase the academic level and the medallion level going on next year.
I need to get in test prep because, man, they're going to be ranking in, but I think, and going back to this whole application process, going back to the different types of school, kind of full circle here, you have your competitive admissions that are looking at the 2 factors, your GPA and your ACT, SAT scores. And then you have schools like you that look at all factors. Your one day of testing doesn't indicate or predict how successful you're going to be at Florida Southern. So you look at everything.
We do.
I mean, it's still important, don't get me wrong, but.
Right. That's also why, though, sometimes I do bring up that top 75% there. And we have minimums for some programs. And there are, so we'll have that as well. Our nursing program, I go back to that for a minute. We're a BSN.
Very strong, right.
I mean, a student has to have a 3.5 GPA, a 24 ACT, or an 1150 SAT. I mean, that is the minimum criteria that we're generally looking for our nursing program.
That's a very competitive program.
It is. It is. So I kind of pull some of those programs aside. We have a doctorate of physical therapy at Florida Southern, and we also have a tracking program called exercise science, which is kinesiology, essentially sports medicine. That is also very strongly competitive because it's an articulation program that we have with our own doctorate program on campus filters into that. So we're looking for strong students that are going to be prepared to be successful, because the last thing any school wants to do is admit a student that they know is not academically prepared for a program. And I'm very honest in saying this. If a student wants to go to medical school and they just are not able to get that B at the bare minimum in biology that's there, schools are looking at that on your high school transcript. Regardless, sometimes you get a rough teacher. We know that. But if you take it as dual enrollment or something, or an AP and retest on that to get that, it's an indicator of a student that's going to be looking at that. And the same thing, if you're going to be an accountant, you probably want to be strong in mathematics. If you're interested in English, you probably want to be a pretty good writer. Those are all different facets. Again, that kind of sometimes are program specific. If you put that on, many students go undeclared on the application, and I also want to touch on that for a minute. It is okay to go undeclared on your application and not be sure truly what you want to do when you first start college. The option to put a major on there a lot of times is because of these specific programs that schools are offering. But undeclared is okay. And if you're looking for a specific major by name and you don't see it for a college or university that seems like a good fit for you, that's where you can ask that admissions counselor. Because just because one school calls it one thing, that doesn't mean every school calls every single program the same thing. And sometimes that's where we see students end their application. They say, oh, you don't have this major, this specific major I'm looking for. I'll give hospitality as an opportunity, as an example of that. UCF has the Rosen School of Hospitality. That's what they have their own campus for. Hospitality is known there. We have students that graduate out of our business program and work in hospitality because they've taken courses. They get the same general type of education, very similar opportunities that are there, but just because it doesn't list hospitality as a major that's there. So great question. So if a student retests on the SAT or ACT, and if they do worse the second time that's there, this is where you can ask the school. Like for us at Florida Southern, I'll even talk about some peer schools. Lynn University, outstanding school that's down in the Boca Raton area.
Beautiful.
If you're looking at aviation, very little known that they have a great aviation program there. Different than Embry-Riddle that's here in the state. Maybe you're looking at, I'll kind of touch on another one of the schools that's out there, FAU. We're going to look at students where they want all the same things that the State University of Simpson does, but keep sending your test scores. That's there. They actually encourage students to do that. Keep sending your test scores. They super score. We ask for new test scores up until March 1st for scholarship consideration. And we don't care if the score goes down. And we're going to look at maybe a subsection went up as well. So they did poorly the first time on math and did great on the reading section. I did SAT and ACT prep when I was a teacher here in Florida. And I would tell my students, hey, go just do well on that other subsection that's there. You got the score you needed on the one. Go back and retest on the other subsection, do well.
Because that happens a lot. They focus in like, I already got my reading and writing score, so let me focus in on math, and it kind of skews it a little bit. And that's fine, right? Especially if you super score. Yeah, don't worry about it.
Send all your scores. And if a school says that don't send all your scores, we just want to look at your best overall score that's there, just send that one. That's their indication of what they're looking for. For most schools that are rolling admissions, you can look at that profile that's there, the middle 50% that we talked about tonight. And kind of go back to that. It's okay. Send in those additional scores.
And I know that you even, because I've worked with you and students and stuff privately before, where as scores came in, you would review them again if a new score set came in, or maybe their first semester senior grades came in because they're having that upward growth trend. So sometimes so that kind of, when you're talking about rolling admissions, when do you submit, when do you not? There's a little bit of strategy there, but that's why it's really important to know the representative.
Yes. So, and you touched on a great point, Amanda, that I didn't mention is decision types in the application process, because I think everyone knows accepted or denied for a university, but there's a wide range that are in between that too. You could be waitlisted, and I'll get to that in a second on waitlisted. What we do at Florida Southern is we'll do held for additional information. So it says, I'm retesting on the SAT or ACT on their common application. They have multiple dates listed, and maybe that student hasn't done as strongly as what we're looking for maybe our nursing program or something. And what we'll say is, you know what? We see you're retesting. We're going to hold to make a decision on this application until we get those additional credentials. That's there. It's on the student then to send in those additional credentials beyond what was initially sent. But it's not a no. It's not a yes. It's a we'll wait and see for other additional information coming in. There are some schools that USF will do this from time to time. Talking with a friend that used to work in the admissions office there, they would get GPA and test scores in the application, and they would reach out to the student and say, we need more additional information. Can you provide X, Y, and Z? That's there for us, so we can make a decision. The other thing, too, sometimes students are on hold because of talent-related items. And I'm not talking athletics. I'm talking about you have to be admitted to the music program to get admitted to the school. You have to get admitted to the theater program to get admitted to the school that's there. Because some schools, what they'll do is they will admit the student to the theater program and then not to the university that's there, or vice versa.
Or vice versa. It happens. Like nursing, that happens a lot, where you get admitted to the university, but then you don't get admitted to the nursing program, and now you're stuck with the university that you can't get into the program.
We don't do that to students.
You don't, but that does happen. Yeah.
I'll state that right off the bat. We don't do that to students. But I will share waitlisting that's out there, because wait lists are growing at colleges and universities. And if a student is waitlisted, generally what that means is they're waiting for the students they offered admission to make their decision, and National Decision Day for the majority of colleges and universities, and this is the date that NACAC sets, is May 1st. So a lot of times you're waiting till after that date to get back from a wait list that's there. And you could be waiting for days, weeks, months after that wait list is completed and that May 1st decision. You may never come from a wait list. You may get that decision of, we don't have space that's available there too. Can you make an appointment with an admissions counselor to meet with them if you're visiting the school? I'm going to state this for my peers in the SUS system. It depends on the school. Previously working for the University of Florida, I maybe have 200 and 300 students that would be at a visit when I come to a high school, where the administration brings me in, has me in an auditorium. That is not a great setting to have an individual conversation, especially with the big flagship schools. I'll state that. If you're looking at a UCF, for example, probably going to be a similar situation that's there. You're better off actually finding out who your admissions contact is and building a relationship with them. If you're visiting the school that's there, absolutely ask to meet with an admissions counselor while you're there. Absolutely. I think that's an indicator of what help you're going to get at the college or university as well. So I apologize if I misunderstood that. If you're going to visit the high school, you're going to visit the college, ask to meet with an admissions professional that's there and find out who that specific person is for you. I mean, I feel like sometimes I'm a walking billboard in Southwest Florida where I have my text message number, I have my calendar linked to my email communication, I have my phone number, I have my contact, my cell phone. That's everybody's different.
Yeah. But you're very hands-on. I mean, they're very. I don't think I've ever, and that's why you're on this webinar tonight, because you are so hands-on.
Sure.
But yes, you can, and even FSW can talk with admissions and so forth.
Sure.
However, like you said, it's probably not maybe going to be the one that's assigned to your area, so they might not know Fort Myers High School. They might not know, they might have a different region, but I would ask questions. And I think going in, knowing which questions to ask is extremely important. Knowing questions like, what's your retention rate? What's your placement rate for these programs? So if you're going to go in, make sure you go in with some questions, I would say. Just be direct, and that you wouldn't get on a normal tour. So I laugh because, Joe, I stand on those big college fairs, like you said, like, the one here in Lee County is just massive, and it's just a zoo. And I see these people all standing in line, and I get this girl comes up and goes, so what's your ACT scores? And you're just like, go on the website. So there are sometimes you can just find, like, just, is there such thing as a dumb question sometimes, Well,
I think it's different for every college. If you're looking at
it, want to help. Yeah.
Yes. I think this is just a tip. If you go to those large events, if you want to get an indicator of who's going to be helpful as a college or university, look at the materials that they actually have on the table. FSU is a great school. It's a fantastic university. The only thing that they bring with them to the actual college fairs is one booklet that has all the information inside of it, and they hand that out. That's what's there. It's kind of the guide to the admissions process. So it's thorough of what's in there, but really, here's the information that's there, and you can find the information, cost, everything is in there for them. The University of Florida, the most popular thing that anybody picks off their table is a gator head. It's not like the admissions information. It's like just kind of the averages because it looks good. That's there. They have other information that's there to help out students. But if you look at a college or university and they have an inquiry piece where they want you to fill something out to get more information, if they have a booklet where it's easily right off the bat, they're guiding you through the booklet when you talk to them. I do that. with families when they ask questions. And I honestly, coming from my teacher background and just a little bit of my background, I don't think any question's a dumb question. I think every question is valid that's out there.
Have you ever taught middle school?
I
I
did teach.
have. I have.
But
Sorry.
I think it's who wants to help,
Yeah.
and how important is that to you that they're helping in the college
And who's
search
going
process?
to take that extra time to give you
Yes.
that help? And I think that's a clear indicator, like you were saying, getting on campus and looking lost. There are clear indicators throughout the process of what your college experience is going to look
Yep.
like. And so whether it's the type of application, whether it's the documents they're requesting, what they're doing. And so I think so many times families ignore those little indicators and they get on campus and they're like, well, that's not what I expected.
Sure.
And it's like, take the blinders off and really look at it as, can I see myself here for 4 years
Yes.
and living here and being successful? So,
Carly, you had a great question there. Is regular college different than honors college for admissions people? For UCF, it will be. It's not for every single school. FAU is a great example of this. They have their own honors campus.
yeah.
They have their own honors director of admissions, their own honors admissions people. UCF has their own person that works with the honors college. Florida Southern, we all work with our honors program at Florida Southern. We do have a liaison for our honors program. We have a director of the program that will talk to anybody, but our admissions team is well versed to help out in that. Sometimes it's a size piece, and how important is that honors program at that school too? Do they have a separate honors application process? That will sometimes dictate who's actually doing that. Some schools will just say, you're admitted and here's your offer of admission to the honors program. It's not an extra step that you have to take. So if there's an extra step generally that a student has to take, most of the time there's actually going to be a person that's going to guide you through the honors application, and it actually is going to be kind of the gatekeeper that'll work with the honors program at that school or university.
Well, I can't believe everybody has pretty much stayed on here this whole time. I think we've just had so many great questions and just great discussion. And I really hope that all the parents and students that were able to be on and who will watch this later enjoyed it as much as I did. So, Joe, you have your information there.
Absolutely.
Obviously, you said you got your phone attached to you, you got your email attached to you, and you are definitely a wealth of information for families. And so just really excited. So you said you had some events coming up. And any other ways, this kind of last minute, like how to connect with Florida Southern or?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll be in the area, in the Southwest Florida area, and our admissions team gets a chance to travel around the state as well as throughout the United States as well. So anytime that we can help out through our admissions team and a family going through the college search process, you can tell even tonight, very generalized in the information that I provide that's there. I'm partial. I love being at Florida Southern. This is my fourth school I've had a chance to work for. Went to a small private school myself. We offer some unique things, graduation and guarantee in 4 years' time. If a student doesn't graduate in 4 years' time, we cover the cost of the college tuition after the fourth year.
Huge. Yeah.
Every student guaranteed an internship. Half of our majors on campus require an internship. And study abroad is embedded in the cost of the college tuition. So we have over 70% of our students studying abroad, over 50 different types of trips that go along with curriculums and different things of interest. So that's special to us, but our community is very special on the campus. We're residential. Our students are coming from all over the place, very diverse on our campus that's there. So going and seeing it, and I'd love to have families. We were just rated the number 7 most beautiful campus in America by the Princeton Review once again this year, in the top 5% of safest campuses in America, and the leading Fulbright scholar producer in the state of Florida this year as well. So some neat notes, very different about the college that's there as well.
And how many students do you have total? So what's kind of your enrollment?
We're at 3,000 total students on campus now, just a little over that. And that's including our bachelor's, master's, and doctoral programs. We go up to a doctorate in education, nursing, our nurse practitioner program, physical therapy, really well-ranked master's degree programs and accelerated options in an MBA, Master of Accountancy, education as well. Our bread and butter, I like to call it at Florida Southern, is the sciences, our biological science research, chemical science research, brand new computer science building going up on campus as well. That cybersecurity is going to be a hub within that. Nursing, we have a 100% placement rate of our nurses, 100% pass rate in the NCLEX. We only admit 80 students into our nursing program each year. So, every student is placed. That is just a specialized program for us because we're direct admit, BSN, as I mentioned, starting day one, clinical starting year two. We're about 16 months ahead of the state university system on that. So education, number one program in the state of Florida at the private level, number two tied overall in the state for that too. We have our own school on campus, new education facility. We'll be the first school in America actually focusing the effects of health on education and learning, and education and learning on health. By the way, all these high pressure tests really affect that. We're going to be studying some of the effects of that within our programs, and some quirky different things that we're known for. I mentioned exercise science, 100% placement in a law school. I can talk about a lot about Florida Southern, but I share a lot of this. I visit pretty much every school within Lee County, Collier County, try to get to any of the fairs that are there. I do host a regional reception every January at the Bonita Bay Club.
That's a great event. It's amazing.
It's a fantastic event. We provide great food. And the stars of that are our Florida Southern alumni and our current students and parents from the area that come out for that. So you get to hear their stories because that's who we put in front of our families on campus, is the students and the families that are already part of our community. I can talk a lot, and you hear admissions professionals as salespeople that are out there a lot of times, but my goal is to get a family connected with individuals on campus to see it's the right fit. Because that's what we want. I think financial aid wise, we offer a ton of scholarships. Take Florida Bright Futures, Florida Prepaid. There's the Florida Ease grant that the state kicks in if you choose to attend a private school in the state of Florida. It's a little over $2,800 a year. That's not well known. That's out there and available. Plus any federal aid, state-based aid. Applying for those scholarships, whether it be the Southwest Florida Community Foundation, the Scholarship Connector of Collier County. Shout out to goingmary.com and Charlie Maynard that runs that program. That's a national database that's available out there for scholarships. Start now on those scholarships. You can start on outside scholarships now and getting started with that. So I'm a one-stop shop for my family's admissions, financial aid, college credit transfer. I'm here to help. That's ultimately my goal. I love when students come to Florida Southern and graduate. My favorite thing this summer has been, I have 4 students that graduated from Florida Southern that are literally living around the corner from me. I have a couple of them move in. 2 of them are from Fort Myers, met each other on campus, getting married soon. That's a beautiful story. That doesn't happen to everybody. It's there, but it's neat to see that because I get to build a relationship. Our students and parents are people on our campus. They are not a number, a student ID number that checks in online for an online class. Every class is in the classroom. Average class size is 18 to 20 on our campus. No class bigger than 40. We don't believe in online learning. That's there. We really believe, going merry. And that's going, like going, and then merry, like Merry Christmas, MERRY.com. You can create a profile as a student.
Are you on, and you're on Raise.me still, right?
Yes, and we're on Raise.me.
Okay. So if you do Raise.me, great profile. There's a bunch of colleges all over the U.S., several here in Florida, and you're micro scholarships. So that's a good one. Oh, I spelled it wrong. Don't listen to me. It's I thought it was like Mary. I'm like, thanks, Mary. How you doing, Mary? No, MERRY. Scully's a good app as well.
Merry Christmas. It's on that.
Yeah, so. that makes sense. That makes sense.
Call, email, text message me. Any students
go visit. I will say, I'll give my last plug. I fell in love with your campus. I'm trying to get both of my girls. I mean, they're 12 and 10, so we're already talking about it. They live in this household. My daughter did. She wants to do fencing, and she's like, "It's great on college applications." And I'm like, "Okay." So, but Florida Southern, like going back to the number 7, most beautiful country or college campus, it truly is. You have such a homey feel. It's got big trees, which I miss.
Yep.
I'm from Iowa, and these trees down here are not big. And it's just a beautiful little campus. So the biggest thing I can say with any college, especially Florida Southern, if you're driving to Orlando, stop in. You're just off of I-4, right down the
We're
road.
30 minutes from Disney World.
Yeah,
So
super.
headed
And
to
you're a
Disney
Disney
or
guy.
Universal.
Yeah,
Yes, I am a Disney
you are a
guy.
Disney guy. So,
Um,
but definitely visit. Go see Joe. But let him know
put
you're
one more
coming.
plug
He will.
in.
Okay.
If you don't mind, I can put a plug in. Monday night, September the 30th, I am hosting a financial aid night to go over I am a FAFSA certified presenter to talk about the FAFSA process, the changes in Florida student financial aid. It's at 6:30 in the U building at Florida Southwestern State College.
Right below me.
In Lee County, Collier County, Charlotte County, the surrounding area are welcome to come out.
30th.
I'd love to pack the house talking about what do you do to apply for FAFSA? What happens when you apply? What is financial aid? How do you find scholarships? How do you review these financial aid award letters that don't look alike? This is the next step in the application process. I'm doing this locally. I have 5 of those in the Southwest Florida area. I usually do anywhere between 10 and 15 of these a year. I go out and do them. So it's the how-to. So September 30th, the U building at FSW, 6:30 is the time of that. So we just got confirmed for that today. So I'm excited about that. Come on out, learn about financial aid. The next day is the day to apply for FAFSA. There, so it's really getting families ready for that.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Joe. Thank you for everybody sticking with us. Tons of great information. And sounds like we have to schedule another FAFSA webinar. So we got something else we got to do. So thank you, everybody. Be sure when you get the link, share it with your friends, family, the people you actually like, because I think it's going to be extremely helpful for so many families here throughout Florida. And once again, Joe, so appreciative of all your knowledge and sharing that with us tonight. So everyone have a really great evening, and we will talk to you guys soon. Later.
Have a great night.